week is rolling along. I'm Carl Azus, welcoming you to Wednesday's edition of CNN Student News. Our first story centers on a detention facility, a prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. It's operated by the United States. It's part of a U.S. naval base on land that America has leased from Cuba since 1903. To start, we're covering the plan. Yesterday, President Obama called for the detention facility at Guantanamo to be closed. The U.S. government has identified 13 potential places where officials could transfer the remaining prisoners. There are about 91 of them there. But no specific location was proposed. This isn't the first time the president has pushed for Guantanamo's closure.
When President Obama was elected in 2008, he vowed that he would close Guantanamo Bay within a year.
There we go.
7 years later, that has not happened. Well, let's start from the beginning. The Guantanamo facility is rented from the Cubans and was normally used as sort of a naval and Coast Guard base for the United States. When we went to war against Afghanistan in 2002, soldiers were picking up what were called men who were unlawful combatants, who were picked up on the battlefield. And they were sent to Guantanamo in sort of a hastily arranged agreement so that they might be processed while there. Well, they weren't processed, they stayed there. Over the course of the War on Terror, close to 1,000 men have been detained at Guantanamo Bay.
Now the debate. The Obama administration says closing the detention center and transferring the enemy combatants held there would save the U.S. tens of millions of dollars per year. There have been accusations that some of the prisoners at Gitmo have been tortured or mistreated, that the facility itself is a dangerous symbol being used abroad to recruit terrorists. And President Obama says keeping the facility open is contrary to American values. But the administration says it needs congressional approval to shut it down. And Republicans and some Democrats have said they're concerned that moving the prisoners to U.S. soil would threaten national security. House Speaker Paul Ryan says moving suspected terrorists to the U.S. is illegal. And American intelligence suspects that dozens of the men who've already been transferred out of Guantanamo have returned to terrorism. Next, to India. Almost 80% of people there are Hindu. And the controversial caste system used to determine the advantages and disadvantages that different castes or classes would have. That was abolished 67 years ago. And India has implemented programs to give those once considered members of lower castes advantages in getting jobs and admissions. But it's a relatively well-off group that recently protested, blocking highways, burning buildings, and looting. They say reverse discrimination has put them at a disadvantage. And though they reached an agreement with the government that ended the protests after 16 people died, the demonstrations disrupted a water station that supplied part of New Delhi.
We're at one of 150 water tanker filling stations in New Delhi. Since the crisis began, they've been operating all day. Every 5 to 7 minutes or so, a water tanker truck like this one has been arriving. They've been filling it up and going to neighborhoods nearby in the northwest of Delhi. This one is headed to a colony round the corner, and we're going to go along and see what happens.
C4G.
We're going to block C4G. We've been getting calls all day for water, he says. As soon as the water tanker arrives, residents emerge from what seems like nowhere, one after another. Word has spread that the water tanker has arrived, so we've seen people coming from all over the neighborhood with their buckets, containers like these, even kettles, basically whatever container they have to fill up as much water as they can. They haven't received any water here for the past 3 days, and this is the first time the water tanker has arrived. They jostle for space. They argue. As one asks the other to wait online, the other shouts back, "Don't take more than 2 buckets. Share." We can live without a shower, but what about cooking or cleaning our utensils? What about flushing our toilets? It's become so difficult nowadays. Every morning, I just dream about water, she says. 72-year-old Lakshmi Ramaswamy has gone back and forth 3 times already. Anything more than this steel urn would be too heavy. She shows me how she's been storing what's become her prized possession. So she's been carrying water in these small vessels because she's unable to carry the big buckets. She's rationing. She doesn't know when the water tanker truck will arrive again. From the elderly to the youngest in the family, everyone pitches in, collecting every last drop. It only took 15 minutes to empty out this truck. Now back to the filling station to carry out this routine all over again. Sunima Uras, CNN, New Delhi.
Our source for roll call schools, each day's transcript page at cnnstudentnews.com. Yongcheon High School knows this. We found their request on yesterday's transcript. Hello to everyone in Yongcheon, South Korea. Jumping over to Wood River Junction, a village in Rhode Island. It's great to see the Chargers of Cherahoe High School. And from Burlington, Kansas, we've got the Wildcats. Burlington High School rounds out our roll. Okay, space travel. It's not for everyone, but for those who want a taste of it, yet don't see themselves working for NASA, a private space flight may be on the horizon. No engineering degree necessary. The downsides, it's dangerous, at least at this point. You wouldn't have much time before coming back down to Earth, and you'll need an extra $250,000 floating around.
Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic wants to be the world's first commercial space line. That is, the first company to take regular people into space on a regular basis. And this is the spaceship they say could do it.
Spaceship Two Serial 2 was constructed here in the Mojave Desert in this secretive hangar.
We're really looking forward to getting it into the air where it belongs and then eventually into space. Head back and we're accelerating.
Dave McKay is Virgin Galactic's chief pilot. He's been training inside of the simulator hundreds of times, waiting for a real spacecraft to fly again.
After rollout, we expect in the next couple of months to be in flight test. Of course, that's hugely significant.
That's because Virgin Galactic has not had a vehicle since a tragic accident in 2014 left its spaceship in pieces and killed one test pilot.
We're going to learn from what went wrong.
The NTSB ruled the cause of the accident to be human error. Spaceship Two Serial 2 was already in development at the time of the crash, but not nearly ready to serve as a replacement.
When we began this journey, we knew that it would be hard. And it has been hard. The number one thing is that we're going to test fly this vehicle. We're going to test fly Spaceship Two, and we're going to make sure that we understand what happened.
Virgin Galactic has made several updates to its new and improved spacecraft.
The actual accident itself was caused by a control being moved when it shouldn't have been done, and we've implemented a new system which prevents that ever happening again.
But building the spaceship and adding those new features has taken time. Spaceship Two Serial 2 has been under construction for more than 3 years.
2, 1, release, release, release.
This is how it works. The mothership, White Knight 2, carries the spaceship 50,000 feet into the air. Then it separates and blasts off at more than 3 times the speed of sound, reaching between 50 and 62 miles above Earth. The 6 passengers on board will experience about 6 minutes of weightlessness.
And at this point, or very shortly, we're going to allow the customers to unstrap and they can float around.
More than 700 customers have already paid $250,000 for a seat when Virgin Galactic eventually starts commercial operation.
It's a sensational experience, of course, but it's more important than that. It's a first step in the opening up space to the wider population of the world.
That last report wasn't to say that only private astronauts would get to have fun in space. Aboard the International Space Station, well, this happened. Astronaut Scott Kelly, who's spending almost a year in orbit, recently received a care package from his twin brother back on Earth. It contained a gorilla costume. So why not? This isn't the first time an ape has spent time in space, but it probably is the first time that one chased other astronauts around. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Simian Administration. They're simian to have a really good time up there. People say spaceflight can be pretty hairy. At least they found a spacesuit that, if not breathable, is still pretty appealing. I'm Carl Azus, and NASA all the time we have for CNN Student News.